All right, so Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone, and Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So the past week, we basically worked on, let's see, the things that are hated to do in Salah. So we talked about turning away from the Qibla. We also talked about looking at the sky, and we also talked about sitting in certain postures or certain ways with the postures, whether it's having the elbows on the ground during prostration, or whether it's having the belly or the abdomen be near and hitting the thighs during prostration or during sujood. We also talked about messing or wandering with the eyes around, or whether it's messing with the things that are around you, or putting your hand on your waist um, we also talked about entering salah while a person is interested in eating. So we also talked about praying while the person is having the need for using the bathroom. Okay, now we're going to talk about the things. So if we talked about the things that are not desirable, what are the things that are permissible? Not necessarily desirable, but even though he said desirable and permissible acts, but we're here, of course, looking at desirable and permissible acts in Salah, but we're mainly going to focus on the permissible. So let's see one thing at a time. So let's see, the Prophet ﷺ, it is a sunnah that a person would prevent someone from passing right in front of them. Let's look at that one. What does that mean? So when you are praying, you want to make sure if someone is trying to cross right in front of you, or let's say stand in front of you and basically become an obstacle in the qibla, then in that situation, it's permissible to block them, not block yourself, because they would be blocking your prayer. And so therefore, just reach out your hand and just let them know that you're praying and just block them. So what if they still attempt to basically cross, and that you can push them away? And let's see, let's look at the hadith. إذا كان أحدكم يصلي فلا يدع أحدا يمر بين يديه فإن أبى فليقاتل فإن معه القرين. Let's see. When any one of you performs prayer, you should not let anyone pass in front of him. If the passer refuses to go, he, that is the prayer, should turn him away forcibly, for this is a devil with him. Even though he said qareen and not a devil, but I can understand it even if I wanted to translate the word qareen, it would actually be hard for me to find an English equivalent word for it. Let me just explain qareen for a bit, even though it's a little off topic. What is al-qareen? So al-qareen, the Prophet ﷺ had said, and even the ayah had actually mentioned that we have a qareen. And the Prophet ﷺ was asked, well, do you have a qareen too? And what is this qareen doing? Just like you have angels with you all the time, you also have a shaitan with you. Okay? That qareen that is with you is basically trying to spew different wasawis on you. Okay, that's that qareen. What does the qareen actually do? So the qareen tries to say mean things to you. The qareen tries to put in sorrow in your heart, makes you sad, makes you angry, or probably tries to get you off the track of Islam. That's what the qareen does. Can we hear the qareen? You know, the waswas? The waswas is actually coming from the qareen. What does the word qareen mean anyways? Qareen means the other side, compatible, or something that is with you. Qarana actually means to basically compare with something, but this isn't to compare something with you, but this is actually saying that there's something that is with you all the time, and that's that qareen. Okay, that's that qarin. So what happened to the Prophet ﷺ's qarin? The Prophet ﷺ said, إِلَّا أَنَّ رَبِّي أَعَانَنِي عَلَيْهِ فَأَسْلَمْ. In one riwayah, فَأَسْلَمْ, or in another riwayah, فَأُسْلِمْ. So what does that mean? So the Prophet ﷺ also had a qarin, but remember when the malaika, they basically came to the Prophet ﷺ and split his heart and then took something black out of his heart. And that was during the event known as Hadith al-Shaqq al-Sadr. Part of that is what they had said, this is what shaitan uses in order to control you. Okay? So that's that qarin. So the Prophet ﷺ said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had one supported me so I could be safe from his waswas, and the other narration that he had become Muslim. But the qarin is still there then, but the effect is not there. Is this qareen? There are all these different legends of this qareen coming to pregnant women and starting to give them scary dreams and all of that. Or when you're about to sleep, the qareen starts to harm you in different ways. So this qareen actually knows everything about you because they're living with you. It's a shaitan that does not leave you. Okay, it's the shaitan that's constantly just standing with you, but your qareen, you can get them stronger by you basically um, surrendering to their spews of waswas, or you can weaken them by not surrendering to their waswas, and then they would feel that, well, I'm basically a failure. Well, basically that qareen. Okay, let's see. So that's al-qareen. So what happens to this qareen? معه qareen, meaning it's the qareen. What he wanted to say in this hadith is that it's this qareen that is supporting this person in doing the wrong move, which is basically passing in front of the person that is praying. So because the person is praying and does not want something crossing right in front of them. So that's why taking a sutra is a sunnah. What is a sutra? The word sutra actually means barrier. Really, that's it. Okay. Now, the word sutra, it means a barrier, but it's anything that basically is mountained. So anything that is mounted. So even if you were to put your purse in front of you, that could actually act as a sutra. Okay. Now, therefore, if let's say you put your purse in front of you, what does it mean? Where should I put my purse in front of me? Like in front of my legs? No. So you're going to evaluate, okay, how far you're going to reach out for your sujood, and you're going to put your purse pretty much where your head is going to be marking as this is your space. So consider it as this is my space, and this is the area that I do not expect anybody to pass from it. So it's kind of like you letting others know the area of your occupants, the area of you and how much you're going to occupy for prayer. Okay, so if a person would pass beyond this thing that you had put as a sign for others to know that this is your little space, then in that situation, that would be permissible. Okay. And then therefore you don't have to go beyond and start getting this person to comply with your order. So here's a question. However, if there's no sutra, is it okay for someone to pass in front of past your sutra, Sujood? So in general, no, they're not supposed to be passing that sutra. That's why you want to make sure that you're not occupying more than your space. And you want to keep that. But if let's say somebody is passing by your area of sujood, there are, just to mention, there are differences of opinions between scholars on that considered that putting a sutra is a sunnah and not necessarily obligatory. Therefore, the space that would act as your space, even if you don't have something that marks it physically, but it can be marked by us knowing kind of like those lines that they would have on the carpet. So on the carpet, they would have these lines that basically marks the beginning of this line and where their margin ends. So some scholars considered that having a sutra is sunnah, and therefore, even if we have these, let's call them imaginary lines, and or even these physical lines on the carpet, that should suffice. That was an opinion, but I'm just letting you know those different opinions because I don't want you, going probably 2 rows in front of you, and you're like, hey, holding on that person's throat and fighting that person. What about kids running around? Even kids running around, you want to, one, we need to teach them not to pass in front of a musalli, and number two, you want to teach them not to do that. Number two, if you're capable of just reaching out to let them know that, oh, I don't want you passing in front of me, that would be permissible as well. So let's just look at that sutra piece of it. One thing I want to mention is that if the person is praying fil haram, well, where is al haram? Al haram is basically the precinct of Mecca. So we're speaking about uh, let's call it the Kaaba in the campus that surrounds the Kaaba. Okay. Hudhaifa has a question. Well, I can't hear you. You gotta make it loud. The black thing in your heart? Okay. Can you see the black thing in your heart? Okay, what if we had, let's say, doctors do an open heart surgery? Are they going to find this black thing in the heart? The answer is no. They're not going to find that black thing in the heart because the black thing in the heart, okay, is something that is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala could see, what the malaika could see, but not something that is let's say, materialistic that maybe a cardiologist would be capable of seeing. So, of course, can you just, no, you cannot take it out because you cannot even see it. So, how can you take it out if you can't see it? This is part of ghaib. Ghaib is part of the unseen. Okay, got it? All right. Let's see. What if the person was in al-haram? If the person was in al-Haram, meaning the campus around the Kaaba, then it's permissible to have people passing in front of you because the space is a tight space. And the Prophet ﷺ basically let us know that that's permissible to have the people pass in front of you when you're in the Haram. All right. And certainly the Prophet ﷺ himself was allowing people in Mecca to pass in front of him, even though he did not have a sutra. That sutra is basically that barrier to let people know where your space ends. All right, and the Prophet ﷺ, even though he didn't have a sutra, but he let people pass in front of him, and he wasn't as consistent about the sutra the way that he was in other masajid. Okay, so the sutra taking it, you said it was a sunnah. Who was that a sunnah for? Is this a sunnah for a person that is leading the prayer, or the person that is an individual? So it's a sunnah for a person that is praying alone, or whether it's an imam. Okay, what's the evidence on that? So there is a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا صَلَّى أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيُصَلِّ إِلَى سُتْرَةٍ وَلْيَدْنُ مِنْهَا. What does وَلْيَدْنُ مِنْهَا mean? So إِذَا صَلَّى, if any of you were to pray, okay, then they should perform the prayer. Okay, they should perform a prayer or place a concrete object in front of him and keep close to it. Okay, and keep close to it. So what does it mean, a concrete object? What are we talking about? A concrete object? Is it really saying a concrete object? Let me see this one. إلى sutra. So the word sutra just means a barrier. So to use concrete object, I guess I'm not necessarily agreeing with the interpretation, or at least the translation that they used here. But it's supposed to be like a mounted object. That way people would know that there's that ending spot. That's basically to let others know. It doesn't have to be concrete in terms of what it's actually what it's actually made of, or something that isn't necessarily fixed. No, it doesn't have to be fixed. It just means a physical, tangible one. There you go. Just a physical or tangible object. That way we could basically recognize it, that it's there. So you're not putting something that is moving on its own and say, okay, well, I'm putting my baby right there. That's not, your baby is definitely not your sutra. Okay, but what if I'm worried about my baby? My baby basically getting kidnapped or something. Can I put my baby in front of me? You sure can. You can put your baby in front of you. In fact, you can put them right in front of you if you're going to be picking them up frequently. We'll talk about that. So taking a sutra is not obligatory. And what's the evidence? Hadith Ibn Abbas, that the Prophet ﷺ had prayed in an open space and nothing was in front of him. You could see this hadith is narrated by Ahmad and and Abu Dawood, and you could see that the Prophet ﷺ himself basically had prayed in an open space. So what does it mean, an open space? Open space meaning that there wasn't necessarily something like a wall or a barrier that would mark that space or that area that he's occupying. Okay, let's see. It should be the sutra if we're speaking about understanding the sunnah. What would and how big would it be? So can the sutra be as big as let's say an arm reach, or can it be something a little smaller just for people to know that this is where my sutra ends? So it has to be something, let's say, big enough for people to recognize that this is a space for you. Okay, so yes, certainly your purse can, if you're speaking about a big enough purse, that can work. But if we're speaking about something small like a pencil, well, that's not a sutra. I wouldn't even recognize that you had put this as a sutra. Okay, so basically to let others recognize that space. So what is the object for the sutra? The sutra is really just to prevent others from passing by and perhaps maybe obstructing or even distracting you during prayer. So that's the whole object of that sutra, and therefore letting you as well know that what's behind and what's beyond this sutra is basically not supposed to be within your concern. So it's just keeping you, I guess, aware of that space that you want to focus on. What if a person was praying in the desert, which is a really open space? Okay, and then in that situation, the person can pray towards something that is, I guess, mountaining there, even if it's a rock, even if it's probably a stick there, oh, or probably even have a stick and just put it right in front of that person. So you've got a stick and just put it there where as a sutra. But wait a minute, I mean, I already know that no one's gonna pass from here because there's no one here anyways. Okay, there's no one here anyways. So it's a sunnah because of the presence as well of jinn. Remember, the jinn is present in areas that people are not present in. The jinn doesn't like being around people, but you're putting the sutra for yourself, and you're also putting the sutra for the ins and the jinn as well. Okay, it's quite interesting. Even when, for example, you're in open space, whether we're speaking about open space to meaning away from the city, away from buildings. If you are in the desert, for example, yes, you would still do like kind of like stick a stick in the ground, or probably put a rock, or probably even put like a line that you might actually draw on the ground as well, just to give the sutra to you and also let the ins and the jinn know. Same thing when you're speaking about using the bathroom, the restroom for relief, even though it's not really a restroom, but I mean the call of nature. Okay, in that open space, you don't want to face the qibla, and you also want to do it against something like a rock or something, and not necessarily in an something that would uh, I guess, let the urine start coming back to you, if it's open air and stuff. And that's basically the sunnah as well. Also to not harm the shayateen or the jinn. Let's use the right word, the jinn. Okay, let's see. It is permissible that a person would wear something during prayer. So in other words, let's say you were praying in your hijab, your sister came over and she said, "Hey, your hijab is actually transparent and you need to put something else over it." So she gave you like a garment for you to put over your hijab while you were in prayer. Okay. And same thing if, let's say, you were praying, you put your phone right in front of you, and then someone started calling and you didn't want to interrupt other people, so you went down and basically put your phone on silent. That's permissible as well. And same thing if you're talking about your baby. You put your baby, and I guess just when the Imam said Allahu Akbar, that's when the baby decided to wake up. Or perhaps, usually kids, when, of course, ladies, we all know that when we're praying Jama'ah, that's the most time when they decide to cry because they're, I guess, confused about all of the sudden silence and confused about why is everybody standing in a specific position. It kind of feels scary to them. So that's when they start crying. They start crying. It's not because shayateen are poking them. I've had people think that the shayateen would poke them just to distract their parents. That's not necessarily the case. It's just the child is basically confused about why the sudden silence, why is everybody not moving, what's going on. It just feels scary to the child and something that they cannot explain. So they would start crying. So how far can I go in making certain movements? So generally speaking, scholars had differences of opinions on the number of movements outside of prayer that you could do. So I'm talking about, let's say you're probably scratching your nose or probably scratching, I don't know, maybe something scratch or maybe your eyelids or whatever it is. Okay. So can you do one move, two moves, three moves? Scholars actually had differences of opinions on the number of them. Some said three, some said two, some said one, and some actually said any move that's outside of salah and not necessary is going to be considered as an extra move and therefore invalidating your prayer. Other scholars actually said three. But let's talk about reasons. We're not here just moving for the sake of movement, just basically for no reason, but we're speaking about trying to understand a permissible reason. You can go up to the door, but of course, with big houses, when you say go up to the door, I'm on the third floor in my house. Does that mean I'm going to go, 40 stairs down and go open the door? Definitely. My prayer is going to be become invalid because I'm going 40 steps down. My whole body is basically going to be turning away from the Qibla. Then definitely that's not going to be keeping my prayer valid. So how far are we talking about? We're speaking about something that is far enough or at least close enough to not get you away from the Qibla, to not get you away from the Qibla. Okay. So in that situation, that would be permissible if let's say the door was within reach, the door was within, I guess, the space that you're capable of staying within the Qibla, at least position, and at the same time, you're capable of opening the door. All right, so what other things can I do? You could even kill a snake and a scorpion. I could even kill a snake and a scorpion. So what does that mean? Well, because you would be in danger. Okay. If you would be in danger and you needed to kill a snake and a scorpion, I mean, scorpions, we used to, I, in, during my childhood, we used to live near Ramallah. Okay. And we used to have a lot of scorpions. I mean, a lot of scorpions, uh, during the summer. You would be just praying. And it's really strange how scorpions, they're really quiet and they all of a sudden you'd be surprised. How did this appear? And when did it come? Snakes as well, they would also come in silence, but some, it depends on if you're talking about a rattlesnake. Okay, sometimes they could make a sound, but they also come in silence. Okay, just all of a sudden. Snakes don't usually do a good job in running away on flat spaces. And they would usually be under rocks, behind something. They would usually be in those areas that are, I would say, shaded areas. So, yeah, that's where you would find them. Same thing with scorpions. They would find a spot and they would usually stay fixated for an hour, 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours. They not moving and just standing in their spot. Okay. But why am I talking about them moving? Because snakes are usually in motion. Okay. So if I'm going to be killing a snake, that means I'm going to be in motion. And definitely, if I'm going to be killing a snake, I'm either going to kill it with me stepping on it. If I'm an expert, to probably think of stepping on its head if I'm an expert. Or I'm going to be using perhaps maybe needing to get a stick and probably bang it on it. Or perhaps maybe get a rock and just throw it on it. Why am I talking about the motion? Well, because it's going to require some motion. Is that still permissible? Yes, it's still permissible. The scorpion, on the other hand, it barely moves. It could stand and it could stay still in one spot, literally for hours. Okay. And even when it moves, it's not that fast. It's not that fast. I mean, it doesn't require a lot. Uh, I would not recommend stepping on it with your bare foot. Okay. Um, but definitely you may still need to do a smaller amount of motion, but you could still move during your prayer, but do not turn away from that place of sujood. If you do need to turn away from your place of sujood to be safe, then in that situation, your prayer is invalid and be safe and leave the salah. Okay, so is this exclusive to snakes and scorpions? It's not exclusive to that. So even if you needed to protect yourself while you're in prayer, that's permissible. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ, there is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ literally ordered that we would kill al-aswadain, the two black things. But a scorpion doesn't have to be black. You can have scorpions that are black, gray, and yellow, right? I don't know if there are any other colors, but those are the ones that I saw. Okay. Black and gray and yellow. I don't know if there are any red ones or orange ones. Are there? I think there are. Whatever. Okay. So why are they called black ones? Okay. Black doesn't have to be literally black, just like you don't have to have a snake that's black. You can have snakes that are colorful and really beautiful designs. They're not black, but they're black, metaphorically. Okay. What we mean metaphorically is in the harm that they might cause. And the Arab used to perceive the color black as a sign of evil. So they used to call them two black things. So it's not the Prophet ﷺ calling it two black things, but it's within the Arabic culture, they used to call them black. So because, of course, why did they call them black? Because a black omen. So basically just a dark omen, and the Prophet ﷺ still used the same name that the Arab used in reference to the snake and the scorpions. Okay, let's see. But a person is not supposed to exaggerate in doing the different movements unless there is a necessity. Unless there is a necessity, that's the only time that you would really want to move. But if the movements are too many, then in that situation, certainly this will invalidate the person's prayer. So why would it invalidate the person's prayer? It would invalidate the person's prayer because it basically becomes a distractor. It becomes something that's distracting you, and therefore, if you're being distracted for too long, then in that situation, your prayer didn't even happen. Okay, let's see. What about things, let's say someone was actually praying, and then someone was like, Assalamu alaikum. You know, some people, they would come in, and before even scanning the area, they would just come in and already vibrant and already, excited to, it happens. We could all fall in that. Okay. We're so excited we didn't know someone was there actually praying. Okay. So in that situation, if the person is praying and someone said, Assalamu alaikum, the person praying can greet the other person. So say what, respond in wa alaikum assalam. No, don't respond in wa alaikum assalam per se, but you can use a hand gesture to basically respond in wa alaikum assalam, kind of like a hand gesture, basically that. Or even, let's say your daughter was telling you, hey, should I turn off the stove? And of course, do a head gesture that yes, turn off the stove, or no, a nod to say, no, do not turn off the stove. That's permissible to do. Okay. Same thing if, let's say, a child was about to fall and you're probably just letting your son know, watch out, and you're probably pointing at your child to let him see that your other baby is in danger, and you're probably snapping to let them know, and then to let them know that you're wanting them to focus on that. Okay, then in that situation, that's permissible to do because what you're trying to do is bring it to their attention in order to keep someone safe. Same thing if you're talking about doing tasbih for men and tasfiq and clapping for women. What they're doing tasbih, what does that mean? So let's say the imam makes a mistake. Okay, the imam is making a mistake in salah. They were wanting to perhaps stand for a fifth rak'ah when they were supposed to stay sitting down, and that was supposed to be the last rak'ah. So the men would say Subhanallah. Okay, but for women, they would do a clap. So what kind of a clap? Do we literally clap palm to palm? No, we wouldn't clap palm to palm, but we would remember when our hand is over our chest and then our other hand is basically on top of it. Okay, so the other hand that's on top of it is basically going to, I guess, just hit against the other hand. So we're doing the right palm hitting the back of the left palm. Okay. Oh, the okay, I shouldn't say the left palm. Okay, let's do it again. The right palm hitting at the back of the hand, the left hand. Okay, that's during prayer. So same thing. If let's say instead of snapping, then that would be the sunnah to basically do this type of hand gesture to bring the attention, let's say because your child was about to fall, or maybe the order was going to be coming, or you wanted them to open the door, okay? And you basically started doing that clap, Well, it should it's in English, it wouldn't be a clap. What would that be called in English if I were to use the right palm against the right hand, the left hand? I don't know if that would be called the clap, but yeah, but so you understand what I'm saying. So you could use that as a way to basically attract or bring the attention to something. Okay. So what if it's a man that was leading the salah? Okay, you could do that as well. What if it's the person making a mistake in the qira'ah? If they're making a mistake in the qira'ah, same thing. If they're making a mistake in their qira'ah, the women would also do the same thing as well. Okay. Now, لا يكره السلام على المصلي. What if the person didn't know, all right, how to respond to the greetings? Somebody comes in and says, Assalamu alaikum, and this person is new to Islam. By the way, believe it or not, this actually happened with Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan. And basically, somebody comes in, says, Assalamu alaikum, and during prayer, he said, Wa alaikum assalam during prayer. That's when the Prophet ﷺ corrected him and basically taught him that during salah, you cannot respond and said anything that is considered as words that people would do. In other words, khitab adami, this is a discourse, a dialogue with a human being, then you could do that. And therefore, you would not do the greetings. Okay. But if the person doesn't know how to do the greeting, like probably a hand gesture, they didn't study fiqh, they're probably going to be saying assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah, and probably invalidating their prayer. So what should we do? You know what? If you know that the person doesn't have the fiqh to know how to respond, just do it. Just come in silently, wait till they finish their prayer, and you can probably give them this, say, did you know? And probably give them this information that they could do a head gesture to respond with that salam. That's fine. That's fine. Or they could respond at the end of salah. That's also fine too. Okay, let's see another permissible thing that one could do. Another thing that is permissible, the person can read a number of different surahs in one rak'ah, a number of different surahs. So we can read, let's see, the Prophet ﷺ himself actually read during his qiyam Surah Al-Baqarah, Surah Al-Nisa, Surah Ali Imran in one rak'ah. That's a pretty long one, right? That's a very long one. Al-Baqarah, Ali Imran, and Al-Nisa. How long would that take? If you're saying Al-Baqarah would take 20 minutes per juz'u, I mean, unless you're reading it with hadr, okay? And Surah Al-Baqarah is 2.5 juz'u, okay? So we're talking about, let's just say 17 minutes and 17 minutes and, okay? So we're right there. Let's just use it in 20 minutes, okay? 20, 40. So we're talking about, and Surah Al-Nisa though, Surah Al-Nisa is a juz'u and something, okay? Or almost two juz'u actually. Ali Imran is a juz'u and something. Okay, if we're talking about that, we're how many? Almost 2 hours. Almost 2, 3 hours right there just for one rak'ah. Man, I'm barely capable of standing for washing the dishes. Yeah. Okay. I gotta really work on my power. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. And it is permissible to read more than one, more than the surah more than once. Okay, the surah more than once, or even read the same surah. Okay, the same surah in two different rak'ahs. So I'm reading, let's say, Surah Al-Baqarah. I really had the power to read Surah Al-Baqarah in the first rak'ah, and then I read again in the second rak'ah. Can I do that? Yes, you can. Can I read the same ayah? Okay, the same ayah and repeat it in every single rak'ah? You sure can. Can I read like part of Surah, let's say Qaf, the first page, and then the second page, I read it in the second rak'ah. Yes, you can. Okay. And what if I basically had started started reading from the end of the surah, like the ending of Surah Al-Baqarah. Okay. Can I do that? Yes, you can. Can I hold the Quran while reading? Or even hold my phone perhaps while praying. Okay, can I hold the Quran or hold the phone to pray directly from it? There are differences of opinions in that regard. Let me just lay out those differences of opinions. The first opinion basically considered you cannot hold the Quran, or if we're talking about a phone, let's just assume we're disabling all the notifications. Okay, and I'm just putting it on that app to read the Quran, and that app basically has the option, it's moving on its own. Okay, can I read directly from the Quran? The first opinion basically said you cannot, and you're supposed to have it memorized. That's the first opinion. The second opinion, they said there's a difference between an obligatory prayer and between a voluntary prayer. And they considered that that's permissible in a voluntary prayer, but not in an obligatory prayer. The third opinion said there's no difference between an obligatory prayer and a voluntary prayer, and you can read directly from the Quran because it's all considered reading, in whether the person is reading from memory or whether the person is reading from the Quran itself. And that was actually the opinion that Ibn Uthaymeen himself actually regarded as preponderant. Okay. From our times. Okay, let's see. Can one read a part of one surah and a part of another in the same rak'ah? That's a very good question. You can read you can read a part of a surah and then make a pause and read another part from another surah. You want to make sure you make that pause and not necessarily connect them with no pause in that situation. So why making the pause? Because you want to make sure that you are not connecting them like it's one, it's that that's how coherent, and making them seem like it's a coherent thing, because you are basically taking two excerpts from two different areas. Okay, let's see. Imam Ahmad and Imam Muslim, they narrated that the Prophet ﷺ used to read in the first rak'ah in Salat al-Fajr, قُلُوا آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَمَا أُنزِلَ إِلَيْنَا وَمَا أُنزِلَ. Okay, so this is basically the end of well, towards the end of Surah Al-Baqarah. Okay, and then basically read in the second rak'ah, قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى كَلِمَةٍ سَوَاءٍ بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَكُمْ. Okay, so here we go. That would be in the second rak'ah. And what evidence do we have? So in the general evidence that they basically had depended on, فَقَرَأُوا مَا تَيَسَّرَ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ. Read what was available from the Quran. And the word tayassar doesn't mean available per se. Tayassar means what was easy for you to read, what was available for you to read. That's tayassar. Okay, but let's see. And to answer also the question of reading different ayat, okay, in one rak'ah, for example, just different ayat, it's best not to do it frequently, but sometimes, okay? Sometimes you would want to do that. That's okay. Okay, another thing is that when a person is reading in their prayer, okay, and they're reading about an ayah that's basically describing probably the torments, or probably uh, describing the torments, or probably the punishment, etc. It is a sunnah right after the person finishes the recitation to actually ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection and salvation from that. Okay. And if they're reading an ayah that basically contains rahmah, to say to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give them mercy. And same thing, okay, if for example, they're reading from maybe Surah Al-Ahzab, ordering us to say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Yes, during prayer to say Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay, to use that. Or even if at the end of certain surahs, there are certain things that it is permissible and in fact preferred, okay, that you would say it during salah. For example, certain surahs that would end أَلَيْسَ ذَلِكَ بِقَادِرٍ عَلَىٰ أَن يُحْيِيَ الْمَوْتَى. Isn't the one that created all of this capable of recreating the dead? And then the answer is Bala. Even though Bala was not actually part of the ayah, but that's what the Prophet ﷺ himself had done. Okay, to respond Bala during the prayer, even though it's not part of the prayer. But the Prophet ﷺ did actually do that. All right. So in general, of course, salah is an important part of a Muslim, and basically consider and just remember that we have to be consistent in our prayer, and that we cannot just say anything, and it basically has to be in the lens of what the Sharia or what the Prophet ﷺ had taught us that it's permissible to do, or basically not to do. Okay, what we're gonna do, I'm gonna give you like a 5 minute, I guess, uh, what's it called? Like a 5 minute break, or even less possibly. Okay, until we go for Sujood Asawhu. Sujood Asawhu is a very important topic, a very, very important topic. So definitely, stay for Sujood Asawhu, because there's going to be a lot to say. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple minutes of like 5 minutes of a break, and then we're going to come back, inshallah. How about that? All right, let me turn off the